Weight loss medication is life-changing. Obesity is an incredibly complex condition.
There is such a narrow view of masculinity, isn't there? There's just a set type of how somebody should look. And so
100%.
if anything falls out of that, it's a case of lads trying to make a joke about it.
I think that there is a lot of narrative around women and social media and ideal body types. I think women are incredibly impacted by that, but I think that it's there for men as well, and it's just not as discussed as openly.
We've often described it as male banter, where we are outwardly mean to each other. Why do you think we do it to each other, and is it okay?
I mean, I'm not guilty of it. I think because it's so deep rooted for me and I know that these things really stick.
Weight loss medication, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Hello and welcome back to The Men's Manual, a podcast designed to cover all areas of men's health with the primary goal to get us all talking more openly about some really difficult and challenging topics and areas that can often be considered taboo amongst men. I'm Shaun Stafford, a manual ambassador, and I'll be finding out about these specific topics and asking the questions men want to know the answers to. And this episode is about weight loss and how much do men really care about it. It's been a hot topic in the news recently, with a lot of celebrities choosing to go on weight loss medication, so we're going to be digging into it here on the podcast today. According to a Superdrug male body positivity study, 41.9% of men are happy with how they look, while a whopping 58.1% of men are not happy with their appearance. The average weight for men in the UK is 84.5 kilos or 182 pounds, but the perceived ideal weight for men is just 76.3 kilos or 168 pounds. Overall, the biggest insecurity men had in this study was their weight. More than a third of those who weighed over 190 pounds agreed that they had negative mental health experiences because of their looks. And in England, men are more likely than women to have body mass index measurements above normal. Also, it is worth noting that obesity levels have increased from 15% in 1993 to 28% in 2019, with mental health problems having a two-way association with obesity, when depression leads to weight gain, which can also trigger deeper levels of depression itself. There's a clear link here with weight and mental health and how we view ourselves. So let's open up this conversation and hear from our epic guest for today, Mr. Stephen Kane, and Voi's behavioural change expert, Anna Mullany. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on the Men's Manual podcast today. Let's start by introducing you to the listeners at home. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And the words are still back. What's your name and where'd you come from?
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a varied background. I worked in mental health for some time, actually, funnily enough, and then speech and language therapy. But all the while I was doing hairdressing. I'm a hairstylist. So I built myself a cabin in my garden. So let's debunk the myth that, people who are overweight might be lazy, because that's certainly not the case with me. I got stuck in, built the cabin myself from start to finish. And now I do hair from home in my little cabin. So amazing. I love it. Yeah.
And you've found Voi to be really helpful in your weight loss journey. For people that are listening at home that might not know what that is, can you dig into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so it's a medicated weight loss program, and it comes with a coach. So you get to meet regularly to discuss your goals and just what you kind of want from it. It's designed to improve your lifestyle, not just to lose weight. So I've just found that it's helped curb the cravings and just take the edge off, the initial difficulty that lots of people face when trying to lose weight for the first time, or if it's another time they've done it multiple times in their life. So that's been my journey. I've loved it. It's one of the best things I've done, and I'm going to carry on until I keep reaching my goals or get closer to my goals. So yeah.
So you said earlier about it being a roller coaster of a journey. Explain to me, from you being 15 to where you are now, what has your journey with weight and your sort of emotional connection with your weight been in that time?
I'm sure many people can relate to it. Affects your well-being, the way that you see yourself. I was definitely underweight when I was more sort of 21, and that was a very different time as well, because that was the noughties, so going back 15 years. And there was a lot of, I would say a lot of maybe body shaming going on there then. And there was some really kind of strange diets going on. And I was someone who definitely succumbed to that and did carb-free diets and did all these sorts of things. So I wasn't maybe losing weight in the healthiest way, and I wasn't really seeing weight as a way to be healthy. My goal was just weight loss. So that's been one of the biggest changes, I would say, to now, whereas now it's more about, living longer and being healthier and just being more active and having more energy. That's more my priority with weight loss rather than years ago.
So when you were 15, were you on the heavier side back then, or has it been? Walk me through your sort of teen and adolescent times and how your weight impacted you.
Yeah, so I started off overweight, and luckily I had a really good support network at school, loads of friends. It never was like a traumatic experience being overweight as a teen, which I'm very lucky to say was my experience. But then, like I was saying before about everything that's in the media and what's kind of expected and body images and ideal standards for men, I was definitely under the influence of making sure I could lose as much weight as possible. So I would say I definitely became quite underweight, was exercising, every once or twice a day. I wasn't eating carbohydrates, like really unhealthy. And then sort of just got comfortable, gained more weight, became overweight, lost weight, so that's sort of been my yo-yo situation until now. So.
And what was your relationship with food like when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, it was, I had quite a big family. I come from like a same-sex family, and I had cousins that lived with me, and we were quite a big family. So it was always centered around food. It would always be maybe like barbecues and picnics and those sorts of things. So we were definitely a food-orientated family. I think that's probably what didn't help with the weight gain. But it was always like a positive experience. It was always really, really lovely.
So Anna, listening to Stephen's story, that must sound like a lot of the stories that you hear through your clients. Like, how similar is that?
100%. On the one hand, everyone that comes to us has a super unique lifestyle and history, and also unique challenges that they're dealing with in their day-to-day. So I would never say that one person is exactly the same as the next person, because they're all really unique individuals at the end of the day. But at the same time, we're all human, and we have a very similar shared human experience, and particularly with weight loss. It's a very normal and common story to hear about people who have roller coasted, to hear about people who have experienced misinformation. And because the drive was there to want to lose weight, you're kind of open to trying what comes your way, right? And so many people that I speak to have got to this place where over years they've had these fluctuations in weight. They've tried absolutely everything from the 90s cabbage soup diet to the noughties Dukan low carb, and finally getting to this point where they're experiencing programs which hopefully are providing a more balanced view on making lifestyle changes and making nutrition changes in line with it being a longer journey and a long-term lifestyle change. But yeah, Stephen's super duper normal.
Yeah. In some ways.
Which I hope is reassuring on a level.
Yeah.
But also know that you're not a cookie cutter. You're a unique individual that has your own challenges that you need to work around in order to find your ideal lifestyle that suits you.
And I think because of that, you have to choose a weight loss method that works for you personally, because like you say, everyone's different.
100%. And it's about finding that balance, but ultimately fitting it into your lifestyle in a way that works for you as a long-term change.
So Stephen, you seem like you're in a really good place and you're super open talking about your weight loss journey. What has been the struggle, and where's the low point been?
Yeah. Ironically, like I was saying, it was probably when I was my slimmest. So that was when I was doing my undergrad. So I'd gone away to uni, and I was, away from family. And I wouldn't say my support network was great until, you start to make friends. And so it's quite easy when you're in a kind of low state to maybe like have a bit of negative self-talk, and not to really speak kindly to yourself. And so I think that was a lot of what hindered me back then, and I think that was what made me quite low and made my weight go back up again as well, or go back down in that case, sorry. So yeah, that was I would say, like, not having the right support and not really being kind to myself, I think was a big impact.
So when we're talking about the relationship that you have with your body, how has that changed over the last 5 or 10 years?
I mean, I don't even care now. Like, I'll just, if I go on holiday, I'll just like whip my t-shirt off, jump in the pool, jump in the sea. I really don't care.
Yeah.
I know that's not a common point of view for a lot of guys, maybe my age or younger. It's something you have to work on. I think you just have to get comfortable and confident with yourself every step of the way and every stage you're at with your weight, and kind of loving yourself no matter what size you are, because you can be as skinny as you want, but actually, like, if you don't love yourself, it doesn't really matter.
I'm really interested, like, what's been the point of change? What's brought around this, seems like, more sustainable, more positive frame of mind for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's as simple as like just a turning point. I think it's like a daily sort of thing that everyone can relate to, I'm sure. But there have been times in my life, like when I was younger and I moved back home and I had that support network again and people looking out for me. I think a support network is really important. Like, you probably agree with that.
100%.
Yeah. And I think more recently, I think a turning point was, we'd gone on holiday, as you know, like, airplanes aren't terribly spacious anyway. They're not exactly plus size friendly either. So I was sort of sat there like crushed, and I thought, this is something for me that I really want to change. That was from like a realization. And I think sometimes you have those moments where you just have like eyes wide open, like, wow, okay, I need to do something about this. And
so would that have been like a source of anxiety for you, maybe getting on a plane and knowing that the chairs are smaller and you'd be sat next to somebody who might have an issue with it?
Yeah, I can't say no. Like, definitely. I'd always have to try and get, and even now to some point, because I'm still on my journey, I would always look out for the emergency exit because there's no leg room. Who doesn't want that anyway? But no, that's definitely a contentious issue. Something I would always think about and think ahead of. Yeah.
And would that influence your behavior? Would that be a motivator in terms of positive behavior, or do you think?
I think it can be. I think it depends on the person and how they take it.
Yeah.
And if it's easy at that point to become quite negative and to have some negative self-talk after the fact. So yeah, but for me, it was a proponent to try and change and to try and just get a healthier lifestyle and just look at my whole situation, my whole life holistically. Sleep and everything, is stress, and just really look at my whole lifestyle journey, not just weight loss.
Yeah. Anna, so listening to Stephen, I can't get over how important a support network is, or how important it's been for Stephen. How important do you see having a strong support network being to a successful outcome when it comes to something like weight loss?
It's absolutely key. We see on the other side of the coin, for example, in research, that if someone has an unsupportive spouse or partner that they're living with, that when they're trying to make change, it doesn't work for the long term. Whereas if you have positive, supportive people around you who are cheering you on through your change and understanding what you're trying to achieve, you're far more likely to be able to sustain any changes that you're implementing for the long term. It's important for multiple reasons, from just generally being cheered on to people understanding if you want to go out for a healthier option, right? Yeah. What specifically for you, Stephen? I'd be interested to hear more about how your support network have helped you.
So I agree with everything you've said, and I think as well there's sometimes like a little bit of banter that comes with body shaming and seeing it as a joke, and I really don't like that. Like, I just think it's so it's just not helpful to other people. I don't think as a culture we should be doing it either, and so it's not just having the support, it's making sure there is no shaming. I think amongst family members, jokes, comments, whatever it might be, like, that might be intended as harmless, but they can actually take more of a like deep-rooted perspective for somebody.
100%. Yeah. And I just like to reflect as well, because I think it's really important what you've said about, you've got to this place where you feel like you feel really positive about your body image by the sounds of it. And I think that really demonstrates to people that actually body image and the way that it makes you feel can be impacted by weight, but actually it's actually quite distinct from weight. It's something that you work on aside. Weight is a separate topic, and for you, for everyone, it's about finding their why. You know, it's very personal as to why someone might want to make a change to their weight. And it sounds like for you, Stephen, it's been about health, about, how do you say, energy. It's about a holistic view of generally feeling great with getting your sleep in line, your stress, looking at your lifestyle as a whole. And all of those things can contribute to helping people feel really great. And that is distinct from body image. You know, it's helpful as when you're feeling linked, great, you're more likely, right? But it can be a separate topic. So I just really love the way that you're thinking about your change in such a positive, internally driven way.
Do you know what I'm loving about this podcast so far is that you both are not only incredibly generous with how open you are, but how passionate you are about this too. Anna, so your background is in behavioral change. For somebody listening that maybe doesn't know what that is, 100%. Can you bring it to a layman?
I can absolutely bring it to a layman because I think it sounds like the most jargony terminology I've ever heard in my life. What does it mean? But yeah, essentially, behavior change, for me, it almost sounds quite patronizing. It makes it almost seem like, oh, it's just about changing your behaviors, you know, and then you'll be totally fine. But actually, behavior change is a whole entire field of psychology that allows people to understand their life on a very personal level, understand what the core challenges are that they're experiencing in their life, what they want to achieve, and then to be able to understand what tools and techniques you can use that are evidence-based, in that they have been proven to support people to make change. So I always like to think about it as it's a personalized understanding of what I'm dealing with, and then a little toolbox of techniques that I can pull on every now and then to help me on my journey in the best way.
So of the people that you work with, how many of your clients are struggling with weight, and what sort of other issues might your clients be struggling with?
So I work for VOI weight loss program. So everyone that comes on board with us will be wanting to change their weight for the long term for one reason or another. But I always find that a lot of the time after they've been working with a coach, you realize that it goes beyond weight loss. Weight loss is, of course, important. And sometimes it can start with the motivator of like, oh, I didn't feel comfortable in my plane seat, or maybe a doctor told me that I needed to lose weight for my health. But then ultimately it's about identifying my why, and that often goes deeper than that. And for people that we work with, often their why comes down to the core of feeling better in themselves, feeling like they've got more energy for life, for their family, for their loved ones around them, feeling more confident and comfortable in their own skin, and ensuring that they feel happy and confident that their health will be in a good place for the long term. So weight is almost an additional benefit, but it's not the only goal from the lifestyle change that they're on.
Stephen, does that resonate with you? Was Anna talking about your why there? Or is there something more to it? Is there something more individual to you?
No, I completely agree. I think we have such busy lives, don't we? And it's so easy to overlook things like our whole lifestyle and what we're doing for work. And, you know, if you've got kids and you're not getting enough sleep, it's so easy to overlook all of that. But there are such deeper underpinnings, I think, for why we maybe overeat or why we've got unhealthy lifestyles. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
So when it comes to trying to get people to lose weight, what is the main driver behind that behavioral change?
So I would never say that we need to get people to lose weight. I think it's a very personal decision based on how you perceive your weight in a bigger context of something that you would like to achieve. So perhaps you feel like your weight is impacting on your health in some way, for example. So first of all, there's a piece about, on an individual level, understanding, I want to achieve this because of X, Y, and Z, and therefore I then make that commitment to a journey of changing my health, changing my lifestyle in order to get to that ultimate goal. And then once that kind of personal commitment step has happened, it's then a series of using different tools and strategies and taking those small steps, understanding that actually falling off track is part of it, going up and down is all part of it. We're human, we're not going to be perfect every single step of the way. And ultimately, it's the acceptance that by using these tools and getting back on track when I fall on track and making progress is always going to be so much better than feeling the need to be perfect about it. And yeah, it's a dynamic journey when it comes to change, right?
Yeah, and I think what you said about being human and not having this perfect structure around it, we like to treat ourselves, we like to indulge every so often. I think that's normal in moderation, so we just got to be mindful, but you can't rule it out, can you?
No,
Nothing is off the table, Stephen. Nothing is off the table.
Life is about balance.
Exactly.
We've got to enjoy it, and part of this process is also finding your balance. So ultimately, when you get to the point where you feel, do you know what? I feel like I'm in a great place with my weight. I feel like I'm in a great place with my lifestyle. You've created this lifestyle that's easy for you to maintain and sustain for the long term because it's realistic.
Yeah.
It's not a super low carb cabbage soup diet that you're going to do for 20 years.
It fits.
No, I don't think anybody wants to be drinking cabbage soup for 20 years.
Even for one day?
Yeah, even for one day. Here's a question. Of all of your clients, do you see a material difference between men seeking to lose weight and women seeking to lose weight?
What do you mean by material difference?
Do men care about it as much as women do?
What do you guys think?
I've got an opinion on this. Can I share my opinion?
Yes.
So, obviously, I'm a hairstylist. I have my ear to the ground a lot on, men's cutting, men's grooming, all of that.
Yeah.
And you've noticed there's been like such an influx of like hair systems that men have, because they, like, females care about their hair, want to ensure that if they're uncomfortable with their weight, they might decide to do that. If they're uncomfortable with their hair, they might decide to do that. And so from speaking to stylists who install these systems, a lot of them say gents are just as sensitive or affected by body image and perception of themselves just as much as females. Or would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to generalize. I can only speak to this so when I'm working with individuals one-to-one, it's a bit different because they've made the commitment at that point, and at that point losing weight is important to them. But then we have this interesting societal thing, whereas when we look at weight loss programs on a more zoomed out level, around 70% of them are women for the majority of the time, and 30% of them are men. But we've still got this situation where actually overweight and obesity for men is at about 68% prevalence, and for women it's about 59% prevalence.
Wow.
So there's that 10% disparity. So men do have more weight challenges than women do, but actually when it comes to prevalence of obesity, we're kind of on equal footing. But then we see that there's a higher amount of women in weight loss programs than there are men. From my perspective, I think we need to look at it from a social perspective. I think men have this really challenging implicit and explicit messaging around having permission to look after yourself. I think looking after yourself on a societal level is deemed as vulnerable, and it doesn't show masculinity. There's stigma around men taking care of themselves, right? And we see that in men not reaching out particularly quickly when they're experiencing different symptoms. And we also see in the research that men perceive healthcare as not being for them necessarily, and they also downplay the severity of any symptoms that they're experiencing. So whereas women are much more encouraged to reach out for support when they have concerns, it's not seen as we get messages like man up and implicit messages from your friends that are also ignoring symptoms that they're experiencing. So I really think that men aren't given enough permission to take care of themselves in society. I feel like that's changing, but it's changing slowly. And I think conversations like this are important to give more men more permission to be like, do you know what? It's okay to care about your health. It's okay to want to feel great and to take steps to reach out to people to support you with that. And even though weight loss industry has historically come across as quite kind of a female service, actually the messaging is changing around weight loss industry, being more focused on, let's focus on getting you to a good point where you're feeling healthy, where you're feeling energetic, where you're feeling great in yourself. And that should be for all genders.
So Anna, previously you mentioned that you go through certain strategies with clients. What might those strategies look like?
So when I first start working with a client, it's really useful for me to understand what their lifestyle looks like, what they want to achieve. The kind of strategies that we would use in having that conversation in itself is a technique, because we use a technique that essentially helps people to become their own change maker. It puts you at the center of your change, Stephen, and hopefully the coach that you're working with, I'm sure she is, so she's great. Amazing. Obviously. Yeah, for sure. She asks you questions and helps you to kind of figure out what steps that you want to take in your journey. So we like to help that change come from within. And then it's about different strategies like setting small steps. Setting small goals, essentially, of what you might look to make changes around. So when we first start out on a journey like this, it can feel a little bit like looking at the top of a mountain, right? You're like, it can feel quite overwhelming for people. And what we really want to do is try and break that down to understanding, we're not going to leap to the top of the mountain in a day. We're going to take small steps to get there. And actually those small goals and little habits that you want to start building in are those small steps that we would then build in complexity over time to kind of build people's confidence in their own ability to achieve these things, and also keep making changes to those things. So we would build on them over time. When people become bored of it, it's about, hey, do you know what? It's not about sticking to something that you've set for yourself or that someone else has set for yourself. If you feel entirely unmotivated by it, you're not going to do it. So actually it's about finding something that you feel driven to achieve, making sure it's nice and small, keeping track of that and building it over time. And then when someone experiences challenges, which you will do, obviously, this is life, like we said, it's really important to take a beat and understand, okay, well, what is this challenge that I've got coming up? What are my options for dealing with that challenge? Again, not going to be perfect every single step of the way, but actually having some prior planning around that challenge can be super useful to help you feel like you're managing it in a more balanced and successful way. So it's a journey, but essentially the strategies include things like small steps, keeping track of that, building it over time, changing when it doesn't feel good anymore, and making sure you're planning for challenges that are coming up and feeling like, do you know what? It's okay when things don't work. We'll try it a different way next time and feel it out as we go.
So Stephen, on your current program,
Yeah.
you've talked openly about your ups and downs
Mm-hmm.
over the course of your weight loss journey. What sort of strategies make this current program that you're on that little bit different?
Yeah, it makes it work. So with VOI, obviously, it's not just the medication that you're given, it's also the coach. And with the coach, they do set small challenges with you, but it's not just about that. They're obviously really encouraging as well. They're obviously very well trained, so they're really encouraging, really supportive. They really want you to succeed and want you to pick a goal that's personalized. So anything that I set has been sort of my own choosing. So that's been a great part of it. But also on the VOI program, there's been some modules to kind of look at if you want to maybe re-educate yourself on anything, on stress, on sleep, on, like we said before about making sure it's all holistic. So there's all these other elements that people, I think you know about a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet, but actually sometimes you just need to go right back down to basics and just sort of re-educate and get that depth of knowledge back again. So I think that's really helped.
That's so true though, when you've picked up on like 3 more strategies there that I didn't even think about. But when it comes to the kind of strategies that I'm talking about, there's so I'm talking about behavior change techniques, and there's many different types of behavior change techniques, and there are specific ones that will be most helpful for you, Stephen, on your journey. And a couple more of those are absolutely understanding what the right information is. Because even now, right, there's so much available to us online. It can feel completely overwhelming when we're Googling like, oh God, how should I approach this thing? And we get 10 different answers within 5 different links. So understanding what the clear way forward is in terms of what someone should be doing can be really valuable, but then making it fit into your own individual lifestyle with your coach, as well as feeling motivated and reassured and encouraged.
And I don't want to say like accountability, but the support, the touching base and just checking in where you're at. I think without that, like it can be quite a bit harder. So that's really helpful. I've really liked catching up, every couple of weeks with my coach and just telling her where I'm at. And if I want to set a new goal, just keeps you on track, I feel.
That's so nice. It sounds like you've got a lot of value from the coaching experience, which is lovely to hear.
So Stephen, if you don't mind me going a little bit more in depth into your journey. So you've mentioned about some of these sort of mini goals and things that you're working towards. Can you give me a couple of examples of what they might be?
So simple things like just trying to drink more water. We're all trying to do that, aren't we? So like I always make sure I've got a certain water bottle with me, and there'll be some days I don't do it. But if I'm going to be really busy or I've got something coming up, I'll talk about that with my coach and we'll try and come up with a bit of a plan to how to make it work. And things as well like snacking in the evenings, we're all guilty of that as well. And I think for somebody who maybe struggles with weight and with overeating, they might overeat. It's never just 1 or 2 biscuits, it's like a pack sometimes for some people. So just those sort of healthier choices and substitutes. So maybe like a handful of nuts or some fruit or really simple things that you need somebody just to remind you of and give you ideas for. I think that's really helped me.
Is there any place for sort of exercise-based goals? Are you conscious of your movement, maybe steps, that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've got a little exercise bike in my spare room, and that's what I use because people forget, I've done PT in the past, one of the many ways I've tried to lose weight. And sometimes PTs, again, like aren't necessarily plus size friendly. They're coming from a very different point of view. They're forgetting about joint problems and how cumbersome it can be with a lot of weight trying to do exercise. So, I had a PT in the past and we did a lot of walking lunges, a lot of like Hungarian lunges. And I thought, oh my gosh, this does not feel good on my joints, on my knee. I don't want to get a knee replacement at the age of 45 or something. So for me, it was really important that I chose an exercise that was going to be like a bit gentler. So that's why the bike works for me. So I have goals set on how often I do the bike, and I just do like a half hour most days. I try and do it most days, but not always the case.
And how often do you have your touch points with the coach?
Every couple of weeks. And there's there's WhatsApp, so we can message whenever. So they'll check in quite regularly on WhatsApp too, just to have a bit of a chat, which is really easy because we're so busy, and a lot of us are always on our phones as well, so it's just convenient. So that's been helpful too.
I think it's really interesting that you use the word accountability back there. Like, Anna, how important do you think it is for people outside of themselves to be accountable, or to be held accountable by their coach?
I think it's a really individual experience, accountability, based on what you feel like motivates you. From my perspective, I would never want coaches actively holding people accountable to goals that they've set, because they're your goals, right? You're in charge, you're in the driver's seat of your journey, essentially. And that's how it should be, that it should be the fact the client has set their goals, are taking ownership over them for themselves, because you've committed to your journey at the end of the day. It's important to you because you want to get close to this achieving something for your why that you identified at the beginning of your journey. But I think that some people can feel almost like because you develop a connection with your coach and you set your goals with your coach, you also want to be able to report back to your coach that you've achieved something, right? Or you're celebrating something with them, because ultimately your coach is there to be your kind of number one cheerleader and supporter, and there to help you along the way. But a coach is also there for completely non-judgmental support, so it'd never be the case of, oh my goodness, you haven't achieved this, like what have you been doing? More is, okay, well that's not working for you, let's explore a little bit more about why it's not working, what could have got in the way this week, or maybe it just doesn't suit you anymore, we need to try something new. So I would say that accountability might be there in some people's minds, but it's always from a non-judgmental, unconditional support perspective when it comes to coaching done well.
I love that. Yeah,
it's a really great way to phrase it. I love that, because I agree completely.
Oh, I love it.
You're not holding them to ransom. You haven't got a gun to their head trying to force them to do it. All you're doing is giving them the toolkit that they need and then cheerleading them along the way.
100%. The coach, I always think about this like, you're in a doctor's office, right? And the doctor's sitting on a chair and they're telling you what to do, and you're like, yeah, okay. And you've got this kind of expert-patient relationship. But actually, the way that the coach-client relationship works is standing side by side on a journey, and they're there to essentially just support you, walk with you along the way, by your side. They're not there to drag you through or be holding you accountable to anything. They're there to be your friend in change, essentially, as well as your kind of expert source of guidance when you need it. And also experts in what a behavior change process looks like, because when you're in the thick of it, it can be really difficult to find perspective. If you're having a really challenging week, lots of people might have this black and white thinking where you're like, oh my gosh, I've had one mistake, which might mean I'm entirely off track. I can never do this, whereas actually the coach is there to reframe that and be like, do you know what? We're human. Let's find that gray zone, that in the middle, and realize that's fine. So it's just part of the journey. And how do we get back on track again? And that's what the coach is there to do.
Amazing. So I'm going to go a little bit off piste with the next question. So in terms of male body image, how do you feel that social media and even mainstream media impacts men and their view of their bodies?
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Like there's certainly communities out there, and there's certainly a lot of encouragement. I do think, just like with women as well, that there's an ideal body type that is always in social media. It's always there. And we're seeing more of like, plus size and diversity. We are seeing more of that, which is excellent. I think we need even more of it as well. I think we're just making tracks. But I don't feel like it's quite as diverse as it can be. And it puts a lot of pressure on gents as well who've got really busy lifestyles, who've got kids, who've got, and there's so much else going on, and then maybe they can't really talk about it either, because like you were saying before about being quite a vulnerable subject. And yeah, the stats are quite eye-opening, aren't they? So yeah, I feel like there needs to be more discussion like we're doing, and yeah, just a wider and more open narrative about it. Yeah.
What concerns you about the view that men have about their bodies and body image?
Mental health, yeah, depression, low mood, just negative self-talk. I think it has such wider implications, and it can snowball, and you can carry on gaining weight, or you can live such an unhealthy lifestyle because of how it's almost like a binary, like you were saying, all or nothing mentality. Like, oh well, I feel a certain way about it, so I'll just give up almost. And I think that's really easily done when there's a lot of negativity.
And what do you think men can do to improve that state of affairs?
Talking about it, being open, like not worrying so much about being judged or feeling judged, talking kinder to one another, as well as themselves, because, and in partnerships as well, I think it's really important our partners talk openly about it. We hear like horrible phrases like dad bod being passed around. I hate that. I think this sort of culture needs to just be forgotten about, like really, and just be more inclusive. So yeah, I think speaking kindly to each other, speaking kindly to yourself, I think it starts there.
Anna, how does that land with you as a coach?
As a coach, I think Stephen has nailed it. I have nothing more to add. No, I'm joking. I'd love to reflect on that. I think that a lot of the time it's also about listening to try and uncover what your thoughts are, right, as a first step, because I think a lot of this kind of association with the way that your body image impacts the way that you're feeling, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm coming at this from a coaching perspective, is our inner dialogue, what we're saying internally to ourselves. And there is often a process whereby someone has to go through practicing awareness of this in order to become conscious of it. As a coach, I would always suggest sit with it a bit, see if you can do some journaling, listen in to the beliefs that are popping up around your body image. What is your internal script? What are you saying to yourself? And starting with that identification can be really helpful, because you're then like faced with your inner dialogue, and you can ask yourself, and something that I like to ask people I work with is, would you say that to a friend? If you're not going to say something hyper nasty to your friend, don't say it to yourself, and then it's a process of practicing self-compassion, practicing kindness, developing a kinder internal message, to really slowly get out of that habit of that really negative, self-perpetuating inner dialogue that often people can become stuck in. And I think it's a practice as well. I don't think it's like an overnight switch, like you said earlier, Stephen, right? It takes time to flip around that internal dialogue. I think exposure is really important as well. If you're logging onto social media and you find that you are constantly comparing yourself to people that you're seeing online, curate your social media experience a bit differently. As you say, there are more diverse people out there that you can curate on your feed, and actually you can change your view social media wise, but you've got to be purposeful about it. And I think as well, there's this point where there's, the body positivity movement, which is so fantastic and important, but also there's a lot of people that don't feel like they can get there. And there's something to be said for, hey, if you're not ready to feel really positive about the way that you look, practice being kinder to yourself, still practice that kind of self-compassion, but also refocus on something else as well. Think about where your focus is going. Maybe your focus instead can be flipped to your health and feeling great in different ways, thinking about your lifestyle, your stress, your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, the things that you're doing that can help you to feel great. And also when you start having success with things, when you start like setting little goals and having success, they can really impact on your confidence and your self-belief to be able to achieve that, right? Which can also be a great feeling in itself.
I think the low-hanging fruit model is that, I think that's where that is so important. say it's drinking water, say it's, getting out of bed before,
Yeah.
8 a.m., anything like which you can action relatively easier.
Mhm.
Again, it brings that sense of achievement, which you can then build on, and I think is so positive for a lot of not only men, but women as well.
Mhm.
Do you feel that men are more negatively affected by social media when it comes to weight loss?
That's not actually something I can comment on, but I'd be really interested to hear your views.
I don't know. What do you think about it? Are men more negatively impacted? I wouldn't say more negatively impacted. I think they are negatively impacted. Definitely, I would agree.
I think that there is a lot of narrative around women and social media and ideal body types
Yeah.
and being exposed to that. Men are exposed to female bodies, women are exposed to female bodies. Like, female bodies are everywhere with this ideal kind of beauty standard everywhere we look. I think that's changing over time, and I think women are incredibly impacted by that. But I think that it's there for men as well, and it's just not as discussed as openly. I think, again, it's changing. There is dialogue around body image and how social media impacts men as well, and eating disorders in the male population are also increasing. So that's interesting to bear in mind with the pressures around body image. So yeah, it's not something I'm an expert in, but we definitely can't discount it for men. I'm sure they're having a similar experience.
So we've talked about it quite a bit on this show, not only today, but in previous episodes. And it seems to be, we've often described it as male banter, where we are outwardly mean to each other for almost the sake of a laugh. Why do you think we do it to each other? And is it okay?
I mean, I'm not guilty of it. I think because it's so deep rooted for me, and I know that these things really stick. And I've watched one of the previous podcasts where somebody mentioned about a locker room and how 10 years later he still remembered that joke that was made about his hair.
Yeah.
And so I just fully agree with it. And I hate it.
There is something inherent, because I don't really see the same thing happening for women. So I wonder if it's something that is unique to men, and that locker room banter, how deeply can that impact someone's mental health and therefore have the knock-on effect for their well-being?
I think it has massive impacts on people. And again, I think it comes back to this cultural stigma that men are constantly kind of butting up against, around the fact that to be perceived as vulnerable, to be perceived as taking care of yourself, it's not masculine, it's not manly. So you are met with, oh, man up, and comments like that when it comes to your health or taking care of your appearance. It's culturally, historically, it just hasn't been encouraged to be someone that takes care of yourself. And I think that comes to the other extreme, where actually to kind of cope with those emotions, there's that kind of banterous aspect as well, which is...
But then it might be because of the culture we have, that there is such a narrow view of masculinity, isn't there? It's just a set type of how somebody should look. And 100%. So if anything falls out of that, it's a case of lads trying to make a joke about it and trying to maybe feel more comfortable about it, but
100%.
in the process causing more harm. So
100%. I think the definition of masculinity on a culture level needs to expand. We see not only rise in eating disorders, we know that the stats around death by suicide are far more increased in the male population, and part of that is being cognizant of your mental health and feeling that permission that it's okay to seek support, and actually this is what it means to feel good, and this is what it means to not feel so great, and to be able to be encouraged to take action when you don't feel so great, and to have those open relationships with friends that aren't, oh, man up, but actually, oh, mate, how are you doing today? Like, you know, tell me how you're feeling. Take it beyond sport and actually have like, you know, a nice emotional discussion.
Yeah.
And I think it's a generational thing as well.
100%.
I think having this sort of conversation with our parents is probably more challenging, whereas having it with our kids is less challenging. So I think it's hopefully one of those things that through open conversation and really, you know, the modern man driving that more inclusive, more kind agenda will start to have a knock on. And, you know, I'm more likely to have that conversation with my dad, who's mid-60s now, because I'm having that sort of conversation with my son and some of the younger guys that work with me. And, you know, I think having that conversation and it being more widely accessible means that hopefully it will start to travel up the generational sort of food chain rather than just going down. So it'll start to impact and have a positive impact on a lot more men.
100%. 100%.
So we always look to unpack some trendy topics here on the Men's Manual. And one of the most trendy topics at the moment would be weight loss medication. So every celebrity from here to Hollywood is taking this and cutting through the noise. Anna, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Weight loss medication is life-changing. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Obesity is an incredibly complex condition. And we've constantly battled against this oversimplified message of eat less, move more. It's not that. We look at all the different things that influence a journey to obesity. And it's so incredibly complex, you can't even see on a A3 piece of paper. It would be a font size 8, you know, they've mapped it out and you'd still have to use a magnifying glass. These are all the different influences that can impact someone. And the way that I like to view weight loss medication is that it is such an impactful, life-changing tool for people as part of a bigger picture of lifestyle change and looking at changing your habits to a very like sustainable, maintainable lifestyle where you get to this point where you feel like you're really confident with where your health is at, essentially. And the weight loss medication supports you to get there by removing one of the key challenges and barriers that people experience, which is hunger and cravings and the thoughts that come with that. They're constantly thinking about food. And with the support of something that helps to mitigate that, you can really focus on the other areas because you have the time and mental energy to be able to do that, you know. So it's such a fantastic tool in someone's arsenal. And I think, you know, thinking about overweight and obesity, that it's really life-changing for people. So life-changing.
Would you corroborate that story?
Yeah, completely. It's just taking the edge off any kind of weight loss plan that I might have, and it's been one of the only ways that I've had in my adult life where I've been consistently making success with weight loss for such a long period of time. So I've loved it, and I think a product which might help people not need to go to see the NHS because of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, you know, and all these other comorbidities that come with weight gain. What's so bad about that? Like, why are people so personally, like, you know, got such an issue with this product when I think it has so much good, it has so much benefit to people and society. So I love it, and I'll keep taking it until I reach my goal.
Amazing. So the takeaway from that question is it's life-changing and a really useful tool as part of a wider toolkit.
100%. And with any tool, it can be misused, right? So we look at Hollywood and we see these people that are genuinely, you know, not at the right BMI to be using this medication, and that's where it gets misused. It's not meant to lose the extra 2 inches so you can get into your Oscars dress. You know, it's to support people that are on health changing journeys due to overweight or obesity to get to their goals and stay there.
Amazing. So something we love to do here on the Men's Manual podcast is we actually have a real men's manual. And we ask every guest that sits on the grey sofas to leave us with a nugget of wisdom. It can be a quote, it can be a piece of lifestyle advice, it can be anything you want, anything that comes into your mind when we hand you the book that you want to leave for the people that follow you. So Stephen, I'm going to hand this green leather-bound book to you.
Pressure's on.
And ask you for what piece of advice you would give to people that follow you.
I think no matter where you are in your journey, just be kind to yourself, speak kindly to yourself and to others. I think there's so much that can come from that.
I think that's profound, simple and profound.
Yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah,
but yeah,
100%. Is it my turn?
Yeah, you could actually physically pass the book. Why not?
Oh,
that's great. You both got to write in it, by the way. Okay. You have actually both got to make an entry.
Does Stephen have to write in it first? I think something that I always love to say to people, when you are making a change, realize that it's about tiny, tiny steps. And if you've set a step, take it even smaller and focus on progress, slow progress over time, forgiving yourself and getting back on track when things go wrong, and never aiming for perfection because we're only human. Yeah. So progress, never perfection.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that is an amazing place to leave this episode of the Men's Manual. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your amazing story. I'm going to be eyes peeled to your journey, and I wish you the best of luck in what I'm sure will be a slam dunk of a results-based journey for you.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed being on the show.
I loved it. This topic's so important to me, so thank you.
And Anna, thank you so much for your sort of insights and expertise on what is a mind-blowing sort of topic. We don't get rid of you and you don't get rid of me just yet, because I will be talking a little bit more on our bonus episode of the Men's Manual XY shortly. But I just want to say a massive thank you to you both for coming and sharing today. Not only a massive thank you to these guys, a massive thank you to each and every one of you listening and watching at home. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, leave us a rating, like us on whatever format you are listening or watching on. This has been amazing, and I hope this conversation is heard by many more people. So each of your interactions and engagements with our content helps more people find the show. It's been an incredible episode. I have loved it. Until next time, I'm Shaun Stafford. This is the Men's Manual, and we will see you again